What I do, coin traders, thanks for joining me for another show looking at Celestia TIA on that ticker. Looking like a very nice setup right now. A lot of great structure, and there's actually some good things that I do want to talk about in the show today with Celestia compared to a lot of these other L1s that kind of just been exploding lately. And in fact, I actually did make a tweet a couple days ago talking about how the Celestia chart just looked really primed and ready to go, and it does look like fire here. So, if you're not following me here over on Twitter or X, we do talk about Celestia TIA plenty, so make sure you do drop me a follow. At coin_trades is the handle. Looking forward to chatting with everyone over there about Celestia and all things crypto. Now, Celestia is still an extremely new project, and we had a very, very nice movement. So even right when we launched here about a year ago, we were looking at a growth on the spring cycle of about 9x from the bottom. So a very big upside move in a short amount of time. So about 3.5 months here from release that we actually saw from the low all the way up to when we did peak out here on the 11th of February. Pretty significant retracement after that, though, especially for an altcoin. So 82%, so effectively went through its own bear market cycle. So a lot of pullback here, but making a nice sort of rounded bottom here after this big, long period of accumulation. So right now, if we do compare it to a Wyckoff accumulation, big pullback, sign of strength, spring cycle, and then now we're looking at phase D, potentially phase E breakout shaping up right now. So a lot of great things that we are looking at just in terms of a Wyckoff. And now if we actually go ahead and zoom in here on this daily, one of the biggest things to note, and there's actually a couple things with regard to resistance here. And so up overhead, looking at a big closing level of resistance at 838.2. So as you can see, for about a week and a half here, we just could not see the prices maintain a close on top of this level. So very, very resistive, a lot of upside wicks. And so that's why now in the current day, a very nice candle with about 4 hours left until printing the close on this daily, putting in that new higher high on the trend. So a very good sign as well, but specifically too, want to look at the overall nice bullish setup of these exponential moving averages. Very nice kind of forking pattern here where we do have a very nice growth of the 12 over the 26 and the 26 over the 50. In addition to that, after this big period of about a week, we did have a little bit of a pullback and sell-off, but that was actually good and essential because that allowed the bulls to backtest and defend this big 12-period exponential moving average on this daily. And in fact, if we actually zoom in on that setup as well, you can just see how big these lower downside shadows were, especially with regard to the magnitude of the bodies. So we did have a lot of dip buying, just showing how much strength was actually found in maintaining a close on top of this big 12-period EMA support. Now, going to look at the logarithmic scale here and actually want to invert this chart because what I like about looking at the inversion is it gives us a different perspective, but yet still the same properties apply. So what do I mean by that? Well, if this was an uptrend, we'd look at higher high, lower low, and then now lower high as well, and then effectively breaking this big trend line, confirming this, and then starting to see confirmation of holding exponential moving average resistance. So since we are looking at an inversion, that pretty much confirms that this would actually be kind of a bearish downside pattern if this were the setup and not being inverted. So that does kind of give us a realistic scenario that when we do go ahead and invert it to a normal looking chart again, that pretty much the path of least resistance and the likely scenario is just to see this price keep growing back to the upside, which is exactly what we're going to anticipate. And so it probably will take a time to actually grow back to where we saw the current all-time high and trend high coming in right now. So growth from current prices to that level would be about 133% gain or about a 2.3x return. So obviously from the bottom, looking at that to the current level, almost a 6x here, about 450+% gain. So a lot of upside move. If we do want to talk about speculative targets as well, could be a very, very nice upside move, especially with a great use case like Celestia has, allowing other users to create blockchains. I think is going to be a very, very nice use case. So up overhead, plenty of nice speculative targets coming in if we do want to look at an overall move playing out for a very strong bull cycle here. Super speculative, and these are just kind of moonboy targets, but anyway, you get the picture. 1.618 extension as a logarithmic extension anyway. To that point would be 33.93. Up overhead, 2.618 would be 52.54. Next level to the upside would be 3.618 extension at 71.143. And then the very upper end would be the 4.236 at 82.639. So now if we want to take just a normal Fibonacci extension here and not a logarithmic extension, what we're going to do here is basically go from the top of the trend down to the low. So the first extension is going to commit 1.618, 31.58. And then next we're going to be looking at 2.618 at 48.67. The next 3.618 above is going to be 65.75. And then finally above that, be looking at the 4.236 at 76.307. So I think overall 76 is actually a pretty reasonable target because we did have that as a very good target on both ends. So not to say we can't actually see Celestia get a lot higher than that, but for example, even if we do see Celestia hit that $76 level, very nice upside gain from the current price would be a very nice 8.5x return, about 745% to the upside, which is extremely doable, especially when we do go ahead and look at how much nice increasing bullish volume we have had coming in off this scenario. So if we actually do look at how much potential we actually had for growth on the beginning, let's actually go ahead and fill this out again. So we see how much growth there was right off the launch based off of how much volume actually came in for Celestia, especially as it did decline when we did approach our peak here. So peak volume obviously coming in right off the launch. Then it just tapered down and not really much interest at all in Celestia. Kind of a very good sign, especially as we entered a long-term accumulation bottom here. And pretty much we were looking at this bottom playing out from about the middle of June until right after the election time here. So a very, very long, drawn-out period of accumulation here. So we were effectively looking at about 150 days. So very, very long time. So nice to see some nice growth and upside movement here. And in addition to that, like we said, minimal volumes beginning, started to see a little bit more growth off this initial trend. And then now we're really starting to see a lot more volume coming in for Celestia. So I do see a lot of great things, especially as, like we said, we do have a rounded out, nice phase D leading into a phase E breakout on a Wyckoff accumulation. Flipping into the weekly, like we mentioned, a lot of great volume here for the weekly. So on these moves, nice to see strong volume coming in. But the next thing that we're looking at that's extremely good as well is that if we go ahead, the 50 is not relevant super quick, but if we go ahead and look at how we formed these EMAs, and since this is still a very new chart, we don't really have that much data points for exponential moving averages, but we did see resistance on the 26 here. Then we found resistance on the 12 period, then in between the 12 and 26, and then now very nice bullish candle smashed through those. And on the current setup, we're actually looking at a very nice potential here coming for a bullish cross in the next coming weeks, especially after forming confirmation and now that next leg of follow through. Now I want to put on the 50 period EMA once again, because as you can see, we're pretty much right at that level where the last week did get rejected from that 50 period EMA. Right now we're looking at 50 period EMA coming in at 8,955 compared to the price right now just over the $9 level. So if we can maintain over the next just over 2 days, we'd be looking at a very nice potential of seeing a weekly close on top. And especially if we don't get much of a sell-off, we'd be looking at a very nice lower downside shadow compared to a nice body of a candle and hopefully a very minimum wick, which would be a very, very nice sign here for the Celestia bulls on this longer term weekly chart, especially breaking and finally confirming that this trend is changing. So put in our low, put in our high, rejected from the 12 and 26 resistance, pulled back, set that higher low, and then now a lot of great strength, especially topping out these points of resistance. So speaking of support and resistance, the big resistive period that we're trying to break right now on the current weekly candle coming in right at 8792. So looking left, big period of resistance here, previous support, now going to be looking at resistance. And just like we had in the previous week, that price level of resistance along with this exponential moving average are still resistive. So that's why it's another good sign that if we do actually see it close, especially on top of the $9 level, very good sign knocking out not only this 50 period resistance, but also this price level resistance at 8792. Now, in addition to that, we're looking at a pretty big upside resistance point overhead from the current, and it's still a decent way away. So from current prices, for example, we're looking at this resistance overhead at about 1182 to be coming in at about almost a 31% gain from current prices. So a very big zone and buffer. So not necessarily thinking we're going to see just an immediate explosion past that level without some just sort of extremely good bullish catalyst, a lot of hype and a lot of volume to knock through that level. So it wouldn't be a bad sign and bad thing to actually get stuck up resistive, prove this as resistance, and then confirm back test some previous supports before breaking through this level again. That's going to help this to be a very supportive level here on the downside, kind of like we got on the previous move. So on this pullback, found it as support before finally losing it and flipping it into that resistance. Looking left too, coming right off the launch before we hit the all-time high and trend high, this was a very nice point of closing level of support before we actually ran up to set the all-time high. So a very, very relevant line on a technical level coming in right at 1182. And so we are going to be looking at eyes on that as the next big target after the $9 level. Looking at some technicals on the weekly here, looking at the MACD first, moving average convergence and divergence, looking at a very nice bullish cross, very nice gap growing here and approaching the zero line. Histogram bars have been growing above the zero line, so a very good sign ever since the middle of September here when we did finally kind of bottom out before setting that higher low. So a good sign as well. Stochastic RSI coming off the bottom and actually seeing very nice trends to the upside, and then also now want to look at the relative strength index RSI as well, because coming off of the high, pulling back, and we did eventually start this exponential moving average for the RSI. Very big confirmed downtrend below. Finally got our bullish cross here around the middle of September when everything pretty much bottomed, and then ever since did start to see the RSI now on top of this exponential moving average and starting to see that trend back to the upside. So we would love to see this to continue and have the RSI be supported by this trend line and this EMA heading to the upside. So a lot of room, still strength to opportunity to grow here based off of the technical indicators. So a lot of still room to run on some of the longer term charts. So yeah, we know that the big alt season is coming right overhead and different alts perform and take off at different levels. So we know that we didn't necessarily spike along with a lot of the rest of the L1s that have just been taking off. But right now we're actually setting up in a very nice strong chart setup to actually see the next big leg of upside, especially as we do get funds circulating in this altcoin space, and we do start to get a dominance pullback on Bitcoin, meaning that altcoins are going to start to take off. So very good sign and setup here, and I do expect Celestia to get a lot more hype and do a great job here of actually performing pretty well and seeing decent and nice upside gains here over the rest of the upcoming bull cycle. But yeah, with that is going to go ahead and wrap up our show and video today on Celestia TIA on that ticker. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you have not done so just yet. And also make sure to post any questions, comments, issues, disagreements, all that down in the comment sections below, or feel free to reach out over on Twitter or X at @coin_trades. Looking forward to chatting with you all. That is going to wrap it up for now, though, so stay safe, take care. Thanks for joining me, Coin Traders, and I'll catch you back in the next video.